Hello again, I'm Kate Sculpts and welcome to my channel, which I have not posted on in a while due to things being just a little bit crazy at the moment. In this video I'll be showing you how I made Volibear from League of Legends. Now I am pretty much completely unfamiliar with this character because I've never personally played League, but the reason I made this is because it was my first ever commission, of course starting off the year with a bang, so let's get into it. I started off by chopping off some wire for the pretty much legs and torso sort of area, bending it, and you'll see that I kind of curled the bottom around. That's just going to be so that it can attach to the base, which I'll make later on. I wrap a bunch of foil around it, bulking it out, and I do kind of screw up multiple times, making the top half just a little too like hunched instead of like wide. It's a bit complicated to explain, but it looks weird. Now, in my previous videos I have actually used metal wire kind of wrapping it around, and someone pointed out that it's actually meant so that the clay can attach to it instead of for actually bulking, but I realised I actually quite like using it for bulking. I think it's quite cool, creates a cool effect. I just need to do it right and I need to get a little bit better at it. Then after adding a bit more masking tape, I add my clay glue, kind of flattening it out, and then I add the clay onto the armature, getting it into all of those little cracks and crevices and wrapping it around, but it does end up looking just, again, a little bit odd. So I use a bit more clay to bulk it out, get it to quite a nice form that I like, looking a little bit chunkier and stiff and less lumpy like this. You know, the more clay you add, the smoother out it'll become, and I think that this is actually a very good demonstration of that. Then, after wrapping a bunch of wire kind of around each other, I then twist it into this sort of spirally shape to make the base. At this point I didn't really know what I was going to do for the base. It ended up having to be more of a rectangular shape, but for now I just had it as this oval shape. Then again attaching clay glue and putting the clay on top, cutting off all the excess and blending it all together. I did the head separately by, you know, having a piece of wire, foil, and then more clay. This time it's super Sculpey firm, just so that, you know, I can get those details in a little bit more, plus I have something to hold it by, the little metal wire coming out the bottom, so I don't really need to worry about smushing the details, which is surprisingly easy when it comes to super Sculpey firm. Ugh. But yeah, in the past I've kind of always stuck by silicone tools, but in my more recent videos I've been going back to, but I've been experimenting with metal tools instead, and it's actually working very well. I think I'll probably stick with them from now on, which is sad because kind of at the start of my channel I used to always stick by saying, you know, I love silicone tools, they're my favourite, it's never going to get old. Unfortunately they got old. But yeah, metal tools for the win. Anyways, I keep detailing the face after adding the eyes, making the mouth look quite mischievous, and using this scrapey sort of tool, I add the fur details pretty much everywhere except for the nose, which is more leathery kind of, so I just use a little stippling effect on there. Once I've detailed all of that, I do bake it so that it's completely hard and there's no way that I'd be able to smush it in any way, and I attach it to the body. Again, the back is still looking very, very hunched at this point, and I do have to change it a little bit later by whacking it with my, what is it called? Rolling pin. The chest I do, you know, start forming a little bit. Again, later on is when I usually do the form, but I just wanted to get it there now so that I kind of visualise what I was trying to do, because at this point, for me, it just looked weird, but that's just because I realised that, you know, it doesn't really have any shoulders at the moment. It's just kind of like a little slope. But going on to the hands, I, again, like the head, use super Sculpey firm and metal tools just to get all those details in there. One of them's a fist and then the other hand is kind of out with its claws out. I guess it's quite an aggressive pose really, but pretty much the entirety of each finger is just claw. So I don't really need to worry about doing fingers properly. I could just do spikes, which is so much easier than doing fingers. And of course, because it's a bear, hence the name Volibear, it has little paw pads too, so I add those as well. I keep defining the hands, kind of trying to make them look like paws, but a mix of a paw and a hand. I think it actually came out really well. And then I cut the hands off just so that I can bake them separately so that there's no risk of me, again, like the head, damaging it later on. I do have to texture them before I take them off, so I do that for the other hand as well. And then once they're baked, I just slap them straight back on. Then I go and this is complicated because I didn't actually show the full process, but pretty much I just make these sort of spikes, which I think are similar to like crystals or ice that kind of are along its body. And you know, there are some on the back of the like forearm, the legs, and the back, I think is mainly where they are. And something I don't show is, so you can see me using this tool to kind of flatten them out to make them look a little bit rougher, but it's really after baking, which I don't show, is when I get that form in to make it look kind of like crystals, where the edges are more flat and rigid. I use a knife to do that. Again, like I said, I did it off camera. I do apologise for that, but pretty much just scraping. It's nothing too complicated. And then I attach them in, of course, starting off with the forearms, and I do attach little strands of fur just to make it look a little bit more defined. Plus this sort of forearm area of its body, it does have kind of like a, not a glove obviously, but like the fur kind of makes it kind of look like a glove. I'm saying kind of a lot, apologies. And then I go in and do the legs, same kind of thing, just squishing them in there, using some clay glue to make sure that they stick later on and they won't fall off after being baked, and more clay just to attach them in. Then I texture the rest of it, just scraping in like I did earlier with the head and the hands, you know, just a very general thing that I do. Then I need to attach the spiky bits on the back, so I attach them. Of course, the big ones are on top, the smaller ones are on bottom, and I actually make the two sets of smaller ones on the bottom a little bit too low down, so I do have to change it later on, which I actually do around this point. Kind of push them up just a little bit further just so that they don't look too far down and weird, because I'm trying to make this as accurate as possible. I do have very good reference images which I can use, which is perfect. You know, I love it when I'm trying to do a character and the reference images just show it perfectly in every angle. It's just great. It's exactly what I need. I do recommend that, you know, if you're going to do a character, try and see what it looks like from every angle, because it can be difficult to get things right. There are certainly so many characters that I can't tell if I've done them right because I don't know what they look like from different angles. I mean, if you've ever seen the video on the other mother that I made from Coraline, there's so many angles that I just can't see, especially because the scene where it looks like that is dim. But I'm going off on a tangent, so let's go back. At this point, you know, just adding little tufts of fur along like the shoulder sort of area. It kind of has that sort of mat or fur on that area, which I think is pretty cool. And of course I do texture them afterwards, which is a little bit difficult because if you're scraping kind of backwards and the tip of the strand of fur kind of squishes itself and it ends up looking a bit weird, but I was relatively successful in this moment. And then it does have, I think, pretty much a ponytail. I don't know exactly what it is, but it has like a big chunk of hair at the back of its head. So I make that, attach it on, and detail it using my silicone tool, which I said earlier I don't usually use anymore, but I do use it sometimes, not as often as I used to, because I used to use it for everything. Love metal tools now. Then I go in and texture it. You might notice that I kind of left the top of the head with nothing on it, and that's because there is another layer of those fur tufts, just kind of touching the top of the head, and then again, pretty much like I did for the entirety of the rest of the body, I texture it. And of course it does have two little bear ears as well, quite small ears. So cute and dainty. I don't know if I'd call this cute though. I wouldn't say this is very cute. Then I just add, like, you know, the chest, the pec sort of area, I think that's what it's called. Then I just go in and texture this, like, upper chest, like the neck, the mouth kind of going across the shoulders. I use my silicone tools to add the general deeper textures, and then I go in with this scrapey tool to add kind of the furry bits. Then I do bake it, which means that I now need to add more clay so that I can texture the bottom half of the body. I do also attach it to the base at this point so that I can also make the feet, and then later on the base, like actually texture it, but that's after it's been baked yet again. To make the feet, you'll actually notice something that I do, which was slightly different to how I did the claws. Instead of adding each individual toe on, I will actually kind of pull the clay outwards to make it pointed. I believe that works just a little bit better. It makes it look a little bit more cohesive. And then of course I do add the defining parts between the main foot and the claws, and then texture like usual, and more tufts of fur. When it comes to character design, something that I do like about this is the use of different pieces of material. So on the actual character model, the hands, it kind of, they don't look like gloves, but it looks like it's kind of wearing gloves because it has the paw connected to fur which isn't connected to the upper arm fur, and same with the legs. You have the fur all down the legs, not connected to the stomach area, not connected to the feet, and also the back as well. It has fur on it, not connected to anywhere else. That's kind of to separate areas of it, and I really like that about the design. I think it's actually quite great that it has that. When you separate areas, it creates more defining areas on the model. I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but I hope you know what I'm trying to get across. Separate areas make something look a little bit like more cohesive in a way that it's separated but clearly still connected and not over designed, I guess. But like I'd say this is a good design. It's a good amount of separation versus connection in terms of areas. Wow, I suck at talking. Anyways, at this point I use cos clay, which is a different type of clay which can bend after it's baked. I don't use it because I want it to bend, I use it because I don't want it to snap, because it's a teeny tiny detail which has a very high chance of snapping if you touch it too much. So if you make it out of a clay that's a little bit more flexible, if you do accidentally, knock it, it won't come flying off for no reason. Now, you might notice that the base is a different colour than it was before. It was that sort of tan, beige sort of colour, and now it's grey. That's because I did bake the whole thing and then went over and added the more clay on top, because this is firm, the Super Sculpey firm, which is the type of clay that I use for things like bases, because it's just better now than what I used to do. And of course I needed to add more clay so that I could shape it out into the rectangle, because it was a oval before and I didn't want it to be an oval anymore, because I decided to make, or not decided, but the commissioner asked me to make the map of League of Legends. Of course I'm completely unfamiliar with what the map looks like before I was being, sent pictures and stuff of it. And yeah, there's these like little walls all around. I don't know what they are, because again I don't know how big this map is. I don't know what they are. I don't know if they're walls or anything, but they are grey, so I'm assuming they're like, walls. And I define them by adding little spikes on them and divots to make them, look a little bit more cracked, and then I texture the ground, not as harshly as I usually would do, say, for the moss textures that I make, but a little bit lighter to kind of make it look dirty and and also to not take away too much from the actual sculpture itself. And now for the rest of the sides of the map, I add little trees, which are those spikes that I was making, and then the rest of the area is just sort of rocks, which I use chunks of clay and flatten them out, make them look like nice surfaces. And then the final, I think final thing that I had to do before painting was adding the two large, like, braid-like things at the front. I think they came out quite nice. I just started off by, drilling in, adding a piece of wire and clay onto it. The bottoms are cos clay, just so that again it's a little bit more able to bend, but not really able to bend, so just, you know, it's just so that it doesn't snap. And I texture them, add more, and then there's defining parts on them, so on, you know, they're both sides are the exact same except for one part, which is part of the painting job, so I don't need to worry about that right now. Are the details. So you have this sort of charm at the bottom, and then this sort of bigger thing on top of that, which is like a big, I don't know what it is. It's like a metal with a rune on it, and then I actually make the braids so I can do other textures on top. So I make the braids, separate them using these tools, kind of smoothing them out, make them look a bit more smooth, less rough, and then I texture them, and then on top of that is when I go in and add these other parts. This one's kind of like a squiggly thing with little bits in it, which is I believe made of metal. And the final thing, kind of similar to the bit below it, and then there's another metal piece on top up there, which I will be painting silver later on, and it's just like a little connecting part for the braid, I believe. And then it's baked completely. You might think there's no reason for me to be painting the grey clay the same colour as itself, but there is a reason towards that. One, because the colour is very slightly different. It's more of a blue toned grey than the brownish tone that the clay has, and also because, say I'm going to do dry brushing on top of it. If you do dry brushing onto a surface that hasn't got, you know, paint all over, there's a large chance that it will chip afterwards. The paint might chip off, you know, if there isn't that connecting part beneath it, which is, you know, what the paint acts as when you put it all over. Of course there are ways to stop that, which is like, you know, using a binder like a gloss or, you know, something on top, but I'm not doing that for this one because, well, I am at some points, but not the whole thing. You probably have no idea what I'm about, do you? I say things and then in my head they sound normal, but then I actually think about it and it's like I just sound like a crazy person. I sound like I'm rambling on. Anyways, onto the face. It does look a little bit messy at the moment. That is on purpose. You know, the black bits kind of around the mouth section, I will be dry brushing on top of that, like you see here, so that it looks a bit more cohesive. I do go in later on just to touch it up a little bit more, but I dry brush all over. To dry brush, if you haven't watched my other videos, or if you don't know how to do it, you just get a little bit of paint on the brush and wipe it over the textures. This brings out the textures, so the paint on top is typically a lighter colour, and then the you know, the colour beneath it will stand out in like the little cracks and crevices. It makes texture more easier to see. There are some times like here on the braids where I do more like accurate dry brushing, where I put it into tiny little areas as well, like here on these little tufts of fur at the bottom. I do it a little bit more accurately. Then I kind of do a little bit of shading, just by adding a slightly darker colour into some areas, and then again just a lot more dry brushing. I also of course need to do dry brushing in a slightly different colour, which is slightly darker than the one on the rest of the body for the black areas. The eyes on Volibear are white. They don't have, I don't believe that they have pupils, I don't think, at least, but yeah, completely white, which I really like that. I think it works with the design since it's pretty much fully white, so adding white eyes as well, it's just right, it just feels right. Then onto these metal parts, they're kind of separated by those lines, but because they're a little bit too harsh, I then add a dry brush and then a darker wash on top of them, just to make them look a little bit more connected to the rest of it. And then of course base colour black, so that it looks like metal. Then onto these runes. This is like one of my favourite parts. This is the real speed of it. Of course, this is exactly why I have to speed everything up, because I go at a snail's pace to make sure that I don't screw anything up. Starting off with a darker colour, then going on to a slightly lighter colour, and then the thinnest line is pretty much almost white, but not completely white. This creates a glowing effect. I have done it before. If you've seen the wild robot sculpture, the eyes kind of look like they're glowing. I kind of perfected that technique a little bit more here just to make it, you know, really pop. And of course, there's some of the eyes and the arms as well, which aren't supposed to look like they're glowing, but I did them using the same technique, just not as harshly. And, you know, like I said, those runes, just, I love them. I think they really pop and they really stand out quite nicely. And the hands, the paws, the like spiky areas that I did earlier, they are pretty much all used with the same colour as before, this blue colour. On the claws, I just use dry brushing, but the other things like this is where it gets very interesting. I do something that I've never done before. I make it kind of look like crystals. So I go in with blue, a dark blue, and then a slightly lighter blue. Going kind of, you know, little lines everywhere, squiggly, not squiggly, but straight lines, very harsh. And then I go in with a lighter colour on top of that. Thinner lines, used a bit more sparingly, mostly on the top, and then a lighter colour on top of that. And whew, I think it just looks really nice, like crystals. One thing that I made sure not to do was overlap too many of the lines, because if you're making it look like crystals, the lighter colours, like all the lines are just kind of in different places, so there's no point to do it like I did with the runes earlier, where it's just layer on layer on layer, but it's all just kind of random, it's just everywhere, it's just a bit crazy, which is, you know, I really enjoy doing that. And then onto these spikes, I do actually use a dry brushing of black on the tips, because unlike the other things, it has black tips. And speaking of black, Molly, not kidding, she would not leave me alone. She was going a bit crazy this day. And then again, you know, like I said earlier, more of this kind of crystal texture. And yeah, on the back it's different. But, you know, I can't work because Molly decides to never leave me alone. I don't know what's her problem. She wouldn't get off my lap. She's very cute though, I don't blame her. What an old lady. She's 14 now, I believe. Ah, God, love that. Silly baby. Anyways, finish off the back spikes and then I go on to the base. It's just what is it? It's like dirt everywhere, and then the walls are grey, but then I do go back and add like green, like here, kind of makes it look like grass while having that sort of creamy colour peek through. Makes it look like dirt underneath grass. Quite like that. And then blue for the water, because there is, you know, like two kind of connecting lakes. And then the area around, just like I said before, rocks, which I dry brush on top to make them look like rocks. And then I go in and just paint the trees. I do add another colour on top of all of this, which I don't record, which is a slightly more yellowish green, just to make it look a bit more natural. Then the final touch is the gloss. I gloss the eyes, I gloss the runes, I gloss all the blue parts, pretty much everything that's blue, gloss. Don't, you know, think twice about it. Everything that's blue on this sculpture needs to be glossed. I don't know why, it's just kind of a coincidence, but it's all, you know, the spiky areas, and then it's done. It might come as a surprise to you, but this has been around 3 weeks in the making for reasons now kind of out of my control. I lost a day to migraines, a couple days to dislocating my thumb, physio for my super bendy hands, and more things that are arguably worse. But I can say now that I'm glad I'm done. To the commissioner, if you have watched this video, even this far through, I mean, I don't expect you to, but if you have, then, you know, thank you. This has been amazing. I really hope you like it, because, you know, I've had a blast making this and I hope it lives up to your expectations. Again, thank you. And to everyone else watching this video, thank you again just so much for your support. Like, this is the second year that I'm doing this now, and it's kind of scary, you know, going into the year with over 900 subscribers, and hopefully we're going to keep going, keep growing, keep getting better and better, and I hope to teach more of you, you know, things, and I hope to give good entertainment as well. I don't know how much entertainment you can get from me absolutely rambling on and not shutting my mouth for 2 seconds, but I appreciate it nonetheless. If you want to see more like this in the future, then you can like and subscribe, and I will greatly appreciate that. I'll see you next time. Bye!